Master. Born as Richard Moreau before the Great War, this twisted visionary would become one of the Wasteland's most terrifying threats. He was originally a doctor from Vault City who was exiled for murder, and so he changed his name to Richard Gray and established himself in the hub. Then in 2102, he led an expedition that brought him to the Mariposa military base. During the mission, a robotic crane accident threw Gray into a vat of FEV, which began his horrific transformation. And thus, one of the most iconic villains in the Fallout universe, the Master, was born. His superior intelligence pushed him to experiment on animals and eventually humans, where he discovered that radiation-free subjects produced superior results. By 2103, he had created the first intelligent super mutant and began building his army called the Unity. The Master believed he could perfect humanity by forcibly converting everyone into super mutants through FEV exposure, and those who would not allow themselves to be converted would be forcibly sterilized, while resistors would be executed. But this grand vision was fatally flawed. All super mutants were sterile as a result of the FEV exposure, making his Master race essentially doomed to extinction. The Master's empire eventually crumbled when the Vault Dweller exposed this critical weakness in a confrontation, causing him to abandon his genocidal plan. President Richardson. This thin, nervous man in a frayed suit controlled the most technologically advanced faction in the Wasteland from his oil rig headquarters. Richardson inherited his presidency from his father and ruled through a culture of surveillance, secrecy, and paranoia. Any complaints from Enclave members were treated as disloyalty and resulted in permanent assignment to dangerous mainland operations. While he ran things with an iron fist, his administration simultaneously developed advanced power armor while secretly excavating the ruins of Mariposa military base. And after using kidnapped Wastelanders as slave labor, they finally recovered a pure sample of the FEV in 2238. This allowed Richardson's chemical core to develop the FEV Curling 13, a weaponized version of the original FEV, but this time designed for global genocide. That's because he believed the Enclave represented the only pure humans left on Earth, treating everyone outside of the organization as subhumans unworthy of life. Stanislaus Braun. This German scientist from Kronek became one of Vault-Tech's most influential and sadistic figures. As director of the Societal Preservation Program, he helped design the Vault's horrific experiments on unsuspecting populations. Among his achievements in this role was developing the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, an advanced toolkit that contains the resources to rebuild civilization. But when the bombs fell, Stanislaus escaped to Vault 112 with other unsuspecting residents who would learn too late that they were living with a monster. Because in this vault, everyone would be inside a simulated reality, except Stanislaus had total control over everyone. For over 200 years, Stanislaus used his godlike powers over the simulation to torture the trapped Vault residents. He would kill them repeatedly, wipe their memories, and resurrect them for fresh torment, viewing them as mere playthings for his amusement. The doctor's psychopathic experiments included forcing residents to commit heinous acts against each other for his entertainment. But centuries of torture had bored him, and so he settled on Tranquility Lane, a pre-war suburban neighborhood where he took the form of a little girl named Betty. And then to spice things up, he commissioned new victims to enter his digital prison by 2277. The player encounters Stanislaus in Tranquility Lane and could either choose to leave or kill the other residents as an act of mercy to leave Stanislaus alone in his digital prison forever. Allistair Tenpenny. Born around 2197 in post-nuclear Britain, this wealthy entrepreneur crossed the ocean to seek fortune in the capital Wasteland. After amassing significant wealth, Allistair built his luxury tower and adopted a fake aristocratic accent to match his lifestyle. He would extract rent from residents while rarely bothering to leave his penthouse or even get dressed. But that was just him on a good day. His most infamous act was orchestrating Megaton's destruction simply because the settlement was an eyesore, ruining his balcony view. He justified vaporizing hundreds of innocent people as merely helping speed along natural selection. And after watching the nuclear explosion, he gleefully exclaimed what a grand display of fireworks it was, and wished there was another nuke to detonate. When he wasn't ordering mass murder, though, he entertained himself with Wasteland Safari, which was randomly shooting anything that moved around his tower with a sniper rifle from his balcony. He also previously owned slaves at the tower, with victims like Mei Wang barely managing to escape. Allistair generally hated anything other than himself. He referred to ghouls as zombies and shufflers, and infamously abandoned a ghoul mercenary named Mr. Crowley during a failed expedition. His fate ultimately depends on the lone wanderer's choices. If you fulfill Crowley's contract and confront Tenpenny about his past, he'll try to save himself by offering double payment to kill Crowley instead, admitting, "It's hard to kill those zombies, you gotta shoot him in the head." Alternatively, if you help ghouls move into the tower, their leader Roy Phillips orchestrates Tenpenny's death, and unfortunately, the other residents in what he calls a little accident, with the body found stuffed in a storage closet. But if you follow through with his plan to destroy Megaton or kill Crowley for him, this senile figurehead survives to continue his reign of casual cruelty from his penthouse. Think tank. Before the Great War, 6 top executives at the Big MT research facility had their brains transplanted into robotic shells to pursue immortality and unlimited scientific advancements. But instead, what followed was centuries of depraved experimentation that turned the Mojave Wasteland into a nightmare. The think tanks created deadly creatures like cazadors and night stalkers that escaped into the wasteland and terrorized survivors for generations. Even worse, their disastrous meteorological experiment completely destroyed the town of Hopeville, with the resulting sandstorms flaying people alive and turning them into the marked men, horrifically mutated survivors with their skin burned away, forced to wear salvaged armor just to hold their bodies together. Their recklessness didn't stop there, as they also sold an unfinished fungus experiment to Vault Tech that infected everyone in Vault 22, killing them all and turning their bodies into spore carriers. Their evil extended to the Sierra Madre Casino, where they provided faulty experimental technology to Frederick Sinclair in exchange for using guests and staff as guinea pigs. The defective holograms butchered casino visitors, while faulty hazmat suits combined with the toxic cloud-mutated workers into the ghost people. Back at Big MT, they held Chinese-American detainees in a concentration camp with bomb collars and forced them into experiments that left survivors as insane ghouls. They created trauma suits with fatal flaws that turned dead soldiers into hostile walking corpses. They also developed systems that captured travelers and lobotomized them, destroying their brains and turning them into aggressive shells. One of their own colleagues, Dr. Mobius, eventually turned against them and trapped them in Big MT because he feared their work would endanger the entire wasteland. Caesar. Edward Sallow transformed from an idealistic scholar into one of the wasteland's most brutal dictators through a combination of intelligence, narcissism, and megalomania. Born near the Boneyard, he lost his father to raiders and was raised by the followers of the Apocalypse, who taught him anthropology and linguistics. Despite his education in bringing knowledge to the wasteland, his bad temper and narcissistic attitude made him unpopular among his peers. In 2246, an expedition to study tribal dialects led to his capture by the weakened Blackfoot tribe, who were losing a war against 7 other groups. But rather than accepting death, Edward saw an opportunity to teach the tribe modern warfare tactics, transforming them into an unstoppable force. He quickly rose through the ranks and ordered the complete genocide of the Ridgers tribe, every man, woman, and child slaughtered to demonstrate total warfare. This horrific display terrified other tribes to surrender, and by 2247, he had crowned himself Caesar, leader of the Legion. Using ancient Roman culture as a template, he created a totalitarian society built on slavery and absolute obedience. The Legion practiced crucifixion, burned people alive, and committed atrocities that made even hardened wastelanders recoil in horror. This self-proclaimed son of Mars viewed democracy as weakness and wanted to create his empire with an iron fist. Father Elijah. He was once an elder of the Brotherhood of Steel, known for his brilliance and dangerous curiosity about old-world technology. Unlike most scribes who focused on preservation, Elijah wanted to rebuild and weaponize what the old world left behind. His experiments and radical ideas alarmed other elders, so they sent him east to form a new Brotherhood chapter in the Mojave, hoping distance would calm him. Instead, the move gave him freedom to pursue his obsessions. He drove his followers to recover pre-war weapons and focused all efforts on the Helios 1 facility, believing its secret weapon, Archimedes 2, could restore the Brotherhood's power. But his harsh leadership and reckless orders led to massive losses. When the NCR overran Helios 1, Elijah fled without warning, abandoning his soldiers to die and the Brotherhood rightfully branding him a traitor. After disappearing, Elijah wandered the wasteland experimenting on anyone he could capture. At Big MT, he perfected the use of explosive collars and continued his cruel research. Eventually, he found the Sierra Madre, a pre-war casino sealed under a toxic cloud. There, he discovered machines that could create anything and holograms that couldn't be destroyed. Convinced he could rebuild the world his way, Elijah planned to use the cloud to wipe out the Mojave and enslave survivors with collars. In the end, his fate lies in the hands of the courier, who can kill him, trap him in the Sierra Madre vault forever, or let his grim vision continue. Shaun. Known as father to his followers, this villain hits different because of his deeply personal connection to the player in Fallout 4. The Institute kidnapped him as an infant from Vault 111 and raised him to become their director. That's because his clean, pre-war DNA became the foundation for third-generation synth production, which earned him the name Father. Having never seen the surface world, he grew to hate everything above ground. This turned him into a cold leader who viewed surface dwellers as lesser beings whose lives meant nothing in comparison to the Institute's goals. Even his decision to wake up his surviving parent was purely an experiment, a test to see if the sole survivor cared enough to find him. But the true scope of his cruelty was revealed during their reunion later in the game. Father showed complete indifference to his other parent's murder, even going as far as calling it collateral damage. And even though he was the director of the Institute, it didn't mean he grew fond of the synths. In fact, he refused to see them as sentient beings, only viewing them as advanced tools. He even called the group railroad-deluded zealots. But to show his calculating evilness even further, Father ordered the destruction of both the Railroad and Brotherhood of Steel because he deemed them a threat to the Institute. Even when he was dying of cancer, Father remained convinced that destroying the Institute was humanity's greatest mistake, and no matter which choice the player takes, Father ultimately dies, which leaves behind either a legacy of the Institute or his broken dreams. Tell me which Fallout nightmare you want me to dive into next, and don't forget to like and subscribe.